Hey, LinkedIn community. Today I'm talking with Aaron McArdle, owner and CEO of RoomReady. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company, RoomReady.
Great, thanks. Yeah. So we started RoomReady as a division of a company we started called Zeller Digital Innovations in 2007. And RoomReady evolved out of a division that focused on installing conference rooms for, frankly, mostly large nationwide companies. And once that part of the business took off, it quickly outpaced the growth of the other parts of the business. And we wanted to focus on just the meeting room technology portion of what we were doing. And so the cabling and fiber optics and phone systems and other generic AV systems just went by the wayside so we could focus on meeting room technology.
Well, it's interesting. As I'm talking with Aaron here today, just to be upfront, Aaron and I used to be business partners. We actually started this in 2007, ZDI or Zeller Digital Innovations. And Aaron, hopefully I'm not going past what we are saying something that's not correct. Is when we first started ZDI, we knew we wanted to be bigger than what we originally started as, basically pulling cable. Very simplistic, but basic there. As we started developing the company, we were looking at technology and room development and basically video conferencing in more of a higher form than what people maybe sometimes think of it that is. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about that. So that's kind of where we first originally started and knew that was not where it wanted to go. So, which is great. Now we're in 2024 and now ZDI became RoomReady became a bigger, better division of the original idea of the company. So with that, what have you seen with the growth of your company in the last, 5-10 years, focusing on one particular area? What is it about that area that you felt like this was a direction you need to go? And this is even before COVID happened, when I was talking about, video cameras and things like that.
So when we started the business, we were a traditional low voltage contractor, and we did horizontal cabling, fiber optic, physical security, audio video systems, and video conferencing was around then, but it was really underutilized, and it was an emerging technology. It was really expensive, and a few big companies had it, but it wasn't common. And then as you and I worked on the business, we just tried to find the things that we could focus on that were going to be the best opportunity for us. And we knew that we couldn't be all things to all people, but also, as when you start a business, number one thing is to make some money and keep the business growing. And so sometimes you take work, or you're spread a little more thin maybe than what you would ideally like to be. And then you just look for opportunities to wean that off. And so that's what we did. The reason why we ended up ultimately settling on the video business was because it was an emerging market. The market was very fragmented, so there weren't very many really big players. If you looked at the other lines of businesses we had at the time, which was the cabling and physical security, there were also some really big mature organizations in there. And without us going out and getting outside capital or making some huge investment, we weren't going to just organically catch up to them. So, the video made sense. We also didn't have any restrictions from a permitting or licensing or, like we did with security. You can't do security in all 50 states. Each state has a little bit of a different twist on what's required to be a legitimate contractor there. Nobody cares about video conferencing. It's like a technology refresh. I mean, a lot of the places we worked, they view it like a network upgrade or something. There's no special license or permits or anything needed to do it. So that gave us the ability to move in and out of states and different municipalities and do the work. And so, and also it's kind of boring. We just do meeting rooms and that's the focus, right? And other AV integrators wanted to do auditoriums and stadiums and house of worship and those more glamorous, and we just were like, oh, we'll do the boring stuff. We'll just hang TVs on walls and conference rooms. And I guess even when we started, it was just at the beginning of TVs on walls. It was projectors and screens mostly at that time.
So a lot of it too is for some people to understand is like the original business was more of a commodity type business where it was just a lot of people were in the market. Entry was not easy, but it was easy to do certain parts of it. So as you looked at this and said, okay, video conferencing, more specialized, talk about the specialization that you guys do in RoomReady, if that is more of a niche market where you're specialized in an area and not everyone's doing it. Not everyone is involved, not everyone's pulling cable. It's more of a focus. What is that focus for you guys?
Well, the barrier to entry with it for us is that we invented a handful of products and processes that allow us to install meeting rooms more efficiently than most. And so that's really the thing that gives us protection in the marketplace. The other part of it is when you sell video conferencing to a company, let's say we sell a big video conferencing system to somebody in Chicago, the reality of it is they're buying video conferencing because they want to communicate with their other offices in other parts of the country, and at least not in other parts of the world. And so we know we're going to be traveling. So when we sell a system to XYZ company in a city, the point is that we're going to be deploying that in many other cities. So you have to be willing to travel. You have to have technicians that are willing to make that sacrifice, be away from their families. You have to figure out, there's a lot of risk in it. If I'm putting in a video system down the road from my office and I forget a transmitter and receiver, I should run back to the office and grab it. If I'm in New York and I forget it, it's at best an overnight ship. It's expensive. It slows the job down. It's not something that I can just run out and fix. And so it forced us to be much more organized and disciplined and come up with different ways to make sure that we could overcome those challenges. And so really that's the thing that has given us the advantage in the marketplace is as we continue to evolve, get better, everybody else is still trying to figure out, how do we do that? And I had an interview, it was last year in 2023, and the guy was telling me, it was a private equity guy, and he was just like, you guys have figured out how to make money on doing like the boring rooms that nobody else can figure out how to do it. And so, I mean, I take it for granted because we've been doing it for 10 years, but yeah, I mean, it's still the thing is how do we figure out how to do simple better than anybody is what we want to be able to do.
So how does that, with that, as you talk about, you can't just go down, you're like, here's my office, but our job is, let's say you're currently in Central Illinois area or Midwest in Missouri. And you're like, well, I can't just go back to my shop, my office to go grab a piece that I forgot or need, and I'm in New York. So how does that, when we talk about supply chain, as people have talked about supply chain and just distribution of product and getting it deployed in different areas, how'd you guys come up with a way to make that smooth transition is making sure all materials are in the place you need it to be, to making sure that your team is able to install in a timely fashion? Because even though you say it might be boring and it's just kind of, the essence of what you're doing is like, it's just a nice steady thing that you do and you do it well. But how did you guys come up with your process with the with the distribution and the supply chain of that?
Well, so Cisco, we have the kind of like one of the milestones in the growth of the business was when Cisco bought Tamberg, we realized that was going to have a huge impact on the industry. And we just through serendipity had a relationship with a guy in Dallas that we had done his home because we did residential audio video systems and low voltage at the time too. We had done his home remotely for the guy, and he worked for Cisco. And I said, how can a company in Normal, Illinois be relevant to somebody like Cisco? And he said, you make meeting rooms that don't suck and you'll be relevant, right? And then I said, great, tell me what that is and we'll do it. And he's like, you figure it out. You're the expert. And so that took some reps to get through that. What does that mean? And ultimately it's eliminate variables. And so initially it was, how do we eliminate the variables of installation, which was some of our inventions around putting the TVs behind the display and the hardware. so that we could eliminate transmitters and receivers and just have a cable that went from the hardware to the display rather than having it in another room. And then it was eliminate variables with the hardware once we figured out the process. So we would bring everything into our office and test. One of the things people don't probably know, it's a nuance in the industry, is a decade ago, it was about 1 in 10 pieces of hardware were failed out of the box in AV. So if you've got 20 components in a rack that's supposed to make the system work, the reality is that 2 of those aren't going to probably work when you boot them up. You're going to have to do a firmware update. You're going to have to do all these things to get them to hopefully where they're functional. So we took that part of the process out of the field and did it in our office, which then that way we could find those bad components. Also, like, it was more than 1 in 10 when plasma TVs were originally released and sent out to consumers. There were 1 in 5 probably had a bad pixel on them or had a bad spot in the display. And so, think about shipping a 75-pound, 65-inch TV across the country to unbox it in New York to find out that it won't work, have to send it back to so we did all those things in the office so that we could control that as much as possible before it was in the field. And then that way in the field, the guys could just focus on the variables that were related to the physical installation of the job rather than all the other things that needed to happen to make the room a success.
So basically, you tested, staged in a location, and then you wrapped it, packaged it, and shipped it to the actual location that you're doing, knowing that hopefully nothing happened during the shipping of it, that it gets there, everything is still working, no pixels are missing, or anything, any variables of that sort is happening. So that's pretty. So did you see a drastic cost savings over time, where you said by staging it, it has definitely saved you time and money? It saved, of course, your technicians time when they're not troubleshooting a lot of stuff in the field itself. They're testing it before they get out, or a group's testing it before it goes out to the final group. So
it took a little bit because it takes time to get good at that too. So we get stuff in and we wouldn't test it all the way. So we were adding the expense of bringing it into the office, which now I've got to ship it twice, right? The organization, the infrastructure in the office, the physical space to have it. We won a project for Cisco, doing their own conference rooms. And I didn't even think about space, and it was 100 conference rooms. And at the time we were installing 90-inch displays, which were kind of the biggest that weren't astronomically priced at the time. And so we ended up getting in 290-inch TVs on a truck. And I never even thought about where the hell am I going to put 200 displays, And so we were like, oh, shoot, now we got to quick find enough space for this. And so there's just things like that. And with, you mentioned supply chain challenges because of COVID, that was also a big challenge for us because we would order a system, customer would buy a system, we order it to come into our warehouse, and then it will be short one component. So we'd have this partial room kit that we couldn't deploy because we didn't have a necessary component, but we had to store it until that part came in. And some of the manufacturers had over 1 year lead time on parts, right? And so that created a ton of operational challenges in the last 2 years for us to overcome with just space and organization and time and inventory. So with
that, do you with the manufacturers, as I've been looking at things and I've experienced with some other groups I've worked with, is trying to look at as it might not be as simple especially for your area, is we purchase the stuff from a manufacturer. They're the only place that makes it. They only have one plant. They have one location that they do this. It's overseas or it's somewhere else that has to be shipped or made. And right now plants are closed because of restrictions. What have you done since then to say, okay, is there a way to offset that at all for your organization, to knowing that, let's say another one of these things happens again, or some other type of supply chain disruption happens? How have you now looked at that past and looked at the current and saying, hey, we can now adjust a little bit accordingly?
Yeah. So there were a lot of challenges with that were things that were outside of our control, right? And so what we wanted to make sure we were doing was focusing on the things we could control rather than, kind of like cussing at the weather, right? Get an umbrella type situation. So we started to, once we realized we had a really big problem with supply chain, and not just us, everybody, we started to get material ordered earlier in the process. So, within our ticketing system, our project, or our CRM, I guess was what this would be, the salespeople put their opportunities in, and then they're pushing them through the system as they're moving through the progress of a sales cycle. And so we used to, when a job was closed, it would convert to an opportunity, and then we would go through engineering and a bunch of steps, and we eventually order material. What we did was we moved the process up. So when something got changed to a verbal commit or a PO in process from the customer, then that went into purchasing so that they could look at the BOM, see if we needed to get some material ordered ahead of time. And we knew it wasn't going to ship, so there wasn't risk of it coming if the PO got canceled, but we could put an order in for that specific project on verbal commit. Then that way we would start the clock ticking, maybe a couple days, or in some instances, a couple weeks prior to that. So it would give us just a little bit of runway. And so we had we started a whole operational task force around that to make sure that the orders were coming in every week. We're reviewing what got moved into verbal commit, and then we were changing the process, moving the process up to accommodate that. And some things, and then the other side of it is you didn't want to order some things, right? So you don't want, if you're going to be waiting on a part that's this big, you don't want all the displays to come in, because you're going to have to be sitting on them, and the warranty starts when you take them, and electronics is not a great thing to want to store for a long time, right? Like, it does have a shelf life. So so managing all that was a big part of our success in 2022 for sure. Yeah.
So how does that, when you look at that, as you look at your organization, just like in operations, looking how do we, from purchase orders to looking ahead and trying to decide what comes in, what doesn't. So your structure, I assume, you're the CEO, you have a president, and you have an operations person. So are you talking back and forth between the president and the COO or your operations person on a regular basis, or how does that work? As you basically started this company, and now things have evolved over time. How involved are you with trying to make sure that, hey, we need to relook at how our operations is, or how things are structured? How does that work for you now?
So we're an EOS company. So, on EOS, but so the outside title is CEO, the EOS title is visionary. And then the outside title for our president, is president. And then we have a COO, a vice president of technology, and a chief revenue officer as our leadership group. The president is the integrator for EOS. And so as you know, I'm not great at details. I'm not great at process. I'm all gas pedal, no brake, all relationships. And, I'm not great at process or one, creating it, and two, following it, right? I just want to go. So I don't participate in that very much anymore because I'm not good at it, and the people that we have in the company are. And so let them do the things they're good at, and I stay out of it to not muck it up. The parts that I do get involved in is kind of since I have the institutional knowledge of doing what we do, of how to do what we do, I'm useful in that, hey, this is our new process. How does it align with hanging TVs on walls? Our current leadership team are all professional business leaders from different industries, none of which have a AV or a construction background. And so, they come at things very differently. And also they've all worked for much larger companies, to help us get to where we want to get. And RoomReady is the biggest company, I've ever worked for. So, so I got to take that into consideration where I'm like, well, this is what I think we should do. And the reality of it is like this wrong.
So. Well, I think it's interesting. It's like, as the company has evolved, and as you are the visionary of the company, and how the visionary continues to push the boundaries, and then the other people in the organization are like, okay, let's figure out how can we make that work, or does this make sense? And like you said, you brought in people that were experts in their field. Doesn't have to be in this particular area, but they're experts in the business world or in supply chain or other types of areas, which I think is always very important to make sure you have the right people in the right seats and try to figure out how does best operate a company, not based off maybe what was done years ago, but now is what is done on the size and volume that you guys do now compared to what it was before. So how does that, you mentioned EOS. A lot of people, talk about EOS. There's a lot of people I've talked to that love it and have really helped them stay organized. What drew you to EOS when you decided to go ahead and move forward with that?
We had a period in our business where we were growing really, really fast. So we were growing, like, we were doubling year over year. And as you know, when you're growing that fast, especially if you're a service-based organization, like everything's breaking around you, right? There's a meme of like or a cartoon of like a dog sitting in a coffee shop, right? The whole thing's burning down around him. He's like, this is fine. Right? And like, I felt like that for like 8 years in a row. And so when you're growing that fast, everything breaks and you're constantly fixing it. And then we had a period where we just weren't growing. Like, it was like, go, 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 go. And then essentially the bottom fell out. And I realized then, like, we didn't have the financial processes, discipline. We didn't have any of that in place to be able to overcome that. And so we really had to like hit the brakes, right size the company for where we were then. And there was a lot of chaos, a lot of people saying, well, this is what I think we should do or that. And so I just decided that we needed a program so that we weren't arguing about how we were going to do it. We can, we are the structure anyway, we can move forward with solutions. And I tell everybody, EOS is like an exercise program. Like, if you want to get in shape or you want to do something, most of us are smart enough to realize if I eat right and I go to the gym once in a while, I'm going to lose weight and get in better health. If you really want to make a substantial change in your life, you follow a program, you get disciplined about it, and you hire a coach, right? And so that's exactly what we did with EOS. And it had a profound impact on the business. We just had to be willing to let it do its thing, right? And be patient enough. And so, your first day of the gym, you're making a healthy decision, but there's no difference, right? You're almost exactly as out of shape as you were when you got there. When you leave, you just keep doing it, and eventually it works. That's EOS. That was EOS for us anyway.
So that, which is interesting with that, with EOS, as you said, talking about, we'll step in there and the comment of scalability. You were scaling, you were moving fast, you were kind of just like, the company is growing 20+% a year. And all of a sudden you're like, you got a lot of things going on. Things aren't formulated in a way that where it's cohesive enough to say we can sustain this growth with revenue, with people, with everything, and saying, so then EOS was kind of like, here's our coach that's going to help us keep this together, or to actually put some things in place. So we all have great ideas, but let's use this process to help us formulate everything we need to do and go in the same direction, instead of everyone trying to figure out how to do it themselves. So that's what it seems like. That's what you're saying, is that's what it's done for you. And I assume you're still using EOS, or you have that coach still, because as we all know, we don't have a coach, we don't have a discipline plan. The gym we stopped going to the gym. We start eating really bad foods. So that's interesting that, like I said, a lot of people that I've run across use EOS, and I've actually worked with people that have implemented it and then go in there and help them figure out some other things beyond what the structure of EOS is, basically saying, okay, let's look at the concepts. Let's look at what their EOS is telling you to do. Are you doing these things? Do you have the things that you need to implement? Do you have a better accounting system? Do you have a better distribution system? And so I think it's a great tool to use for that. What would you suggest for people as we're trying to wrap up here? I'm just curious, anything else you would suggest for a growing company as they are looking to scale, or to, trying to do something that they haven't done before? Do you have any advice for somebody that's trying to grow their company, start a company,
Mhm.
in that vein?
Yeah, we put up signs in our office a few years ago that says what got us here won't get us there.
Mhm.
And I think that that's a key thing to remember when you're growing a business. And, I'm effectively working myself out of a job, right? And I have to realize that, like, I was the installer, uh, for many years, and then eventually was the president and CEO, and then now not the president anymore. And, eventually I'll just be the founder. And you just have to realize, not only for yourself, but for the people that you hire to work with you, that you're hiring them to get you from where you are to the next step. And a lot of people get emotional or get attached, obviously, to the people that help them get there. But um, one of my friends, one of his sayings is, if you want to move ahead, you've got to be willing to leave things behind.
Yeah.
And so I think that, whether that's you yourself, like you have to be better yourself to move ahead and let go of habits, or your old self. I think that that's something that people need to reflect on, especially if they're wanting to grow a business as a rapid growth company. Like, you got to keep up with that growth
Yep.
yourself too. And you got to have the skills to be able to be successful in it. So,
So you real quick, last thing. So you talk about you're working yourself out of a job, basically. You're out of the
mhm.
the position. So is that and this is kind of teasing a little bit about. So is that why you bought a resort, Alhana Resort?
Mhm.
Is that correct? Is that how you say
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Honor resort. Yeah.
So of course it was made famous through the series Ozark.
Yeah.
So is that your next thing, or is that just something? Hey, I just really love about the place. Of course, you love Missouri and love the
Mhm.
area, the Ozarks itself.
Yeah.
So, real quickly, is that your next thing, or is that just something? Hey, this is what I love to do when I'm not running around running a very large company.
No, it's definitely not my next thing. I think it was a good investment. I hope it was anyway. I'm like we said earlier, and I'm not a real financially sophisticated person. And so, the stock market or Bitcoin or whatever really doesn't appeal to me, nor do I have the skill set to do it. So I had to buy something that was physical, that I could physically make better, to hopefully have an investment someday. So I'm just smart enough to sell cheeseburgers and Bush Light to people coming off the lake. And so I'm
Well,
trying to
maybe
do for a little while.
you'll own multiple resorts or something like that. Maybe
I doubt it. I doubt it. I think I've learned my lesson on this one, and I'm going to do my best to make this one work, and then I'll probably stick with B2B business from now on.
I think that's great that you've experienced different things from where you started and where you're at now, and just even still taking that risk to say, hey, I'm going to try something and see what it's like. I enjoy this. It's something I want to do, and you learn. And that's the thing, is you learn from it. You learn from what you do, but you also don't look back too far and say, okay, dwell on what happened. You just look
Yeah.
forward and saying, this is where I'm going. I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to be successful at this, and then who knows what the next thing is. So
I think one of the things that I thought was really interesting with the resort was, so we have the Blue Cat Lounge, which is our restaurant and bar on the resort. And you and I talked about this, Mike, when we had the business years ago. There wasn't that much of a difference between the business, another business that you were running at the time, with the people problems now, and those people made 10x what our electricians made in the business, but we still kind of had the same people problems. Now you take where I'm at with RoomReady, and we have engineers, the salespeople, and all these, hundreds of employees. I had the exact same conversations with my cooks and my servers as I do with my salespeople and my engineers at RoomReady. The cooks don't feel appreciated for their craft, and that, they're in the back slaving away to make this great thing for our customer, and the salespeople don't appreciate them, and they're telling them to go faster and work harder. And all the salespeople, all the servers want is their tips. They don't appreciate it. And same thing in RoomReady. All the salespeople want is their commission. They don't appreciate our engineering, our skill set. So it's funny. I think one of my realizations I have gained from buying the resort is that all businesses are essentially the same. They're all people. They need people. They need good people. They all act the same. So once you figure out how to manage people and solve problems, business is business. Doesn't really matter if you're selling cheeseburgers or video conferencing systems. So
Well, that's true. I mean, that's the funny thing you say that is when I've run across other companies or clients that I've worked with, I say that they're like, "Oh, which have you been in this industry before? Have you done this?" It's like, "Well, I don't know how to sell that widget, or I've not built this thing that you're doing, but I know people and I understand how we all think and how sometimes we are what drives us." And that's the big thing. It's like, so it's not necessarily I have to know exactly how you make the sausage. Uh,
Hmm.
it's like how do you deal with it? How do you deal with the situations that you have dealt
Hmm.
with, from people to supply chain to you name it? What a business is going to run into things all the time that's going to be economically cause problems, and you have to figure out what are you going to do and who do you have
Hmm.
on your team that's going to make this the best effective business it can be. So
Yeah.
it is funny. Yeah, it's funny how something in the past is like, oh yeah, this still holds true.
Hmm.
So but no, it's well, I want to thank you for your time to be part of this interview process, and just talking to basically I'm talking to different CEOs and all different types of companies to find out what makes them tick, what do they do, what do they learn, and I appreciate your time, and
Yeah.
look forward to chatting with you again.
Yeah. I'm flattered for the offer. Thank you.